We're here with Russell Gold, senior energy reporter at the Wall Street Journal and author of The Boom: How Fracking Ignited the American Energy Revolution and Changed the World. Russell, thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you.
So you've been covering hydraulic fracturing and topics related to oil and gas for some years. Were there any big surprises as you researched material for your new book?
Well, I didn't realize just how far back the petroleum industry has been trying to crack open rocks and the different ways that they've gone about doing it. I mean, modern hydraulic fracturing is pumping in water, but over the course of history, the industry has used nuclear bombs in the 60s and 70s, and then even going back to the 1860s, they were using dynamite sticks to create new fractures. So, it's not fracking as we know it, but this whole idea that the industry needs to get down there and crack open the rocks is really as old as the industry itself.
And so as you were saying, hydraulic fracturing's been around for decades. This isn't a new technology, but in recent years we've seen tremendous growth. So from your experience, how are you seeing state regulations respond to this changing industry?
Well, without a doubt, the states have been playing catch up. When this started, when modern hydraulic fracturing started in and around Fort Worth, 2002, 2003, the states hadn't really seen this type of intensive energy extraction going on often right around communities, in cities, for years. We hadn't had an urban energy boom since Los Angeles in the early 20th century. So the states really had to play a lot of catch up. A number of states, Texas obviously and Oklahoma, have very strong oil and gas regulations on the books. But this was really different. It was a new type of extraction. The wells were covering entire counties. These weren't single wells anymore. A lot more water being injected in, a lot more trucks, a lot more community impact. And that really is something that the states had to gear up for. And then you also had places like Pennsylvania and Ohio, which really hadn't seen very much oil and gas activity for a long time. And all of a sudden, Pennsylvania was becoming one of the largest gas-producing places in the world. And so they had to really step back and say, do we have the right regulatory framework? Frankly, at this point, we're still not even fully there. The states are still figuring out, how do we regulate air emissions? How do we regulate these earthquakes that we're seeing as a result of wastewater injection? There's still a lot of work being done.
And do you think there is a role that the federal government should play in regulating hydraulic fracturing? And if so, what is that role?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about the federal government setting sort of a base or minimal standards. But much like the rocks, every state is different. When we talk about shale and this is what people are fracking, but in every place the geology is really different and really has the fracking industry has adopted. So there's a lot of good reasons for the states to each individually create their own set of rules as long as they meet these minimum requirements that really are necessary to have a safe operating environment.
And so you've also been able to travel the world as a Wall Street Journal reporter. Do you see other countries being able to replicate the oil and gas boom like we've seen in the U.S.?
It's been very, very difficult right now so far. A number of reasons. The United States has just drilled so many more wells than anywhere else in the world, has a much bigger services community, oil field service community, much better prepared for a big technological jump like this. But the other big difference is the United States is very unique. The mineral rights are owned by, generally speaking, the people who live in the communities. If you own the real estate, you own the mineral rights. And so when companies came in, they were making deals saying, well, we'll give you $25,000 an acre, $10,000 an acre. There was an economic incentive. If you go to other places in the world, the governments tend to own those mineral rights. There's not the same economic incentive. And it's been very difficult to create that incentive so that people will be willing to say, you know what, we'll put up with the trucks, we'll put up with the the compressor stations, the noise, because we like the money and the economic benefit. No other place in the world has really figured that out. Now that said, there's some enormous oil and gas deposits out there. Russia, Argentina, and China come to mind. So I suspect eventually, maybe 2020 afterwards, we'll see this energy boom spread.
And then lastly, for those that haven't read your book yet, you tell the story about how the natural gas boom has impacted you personally.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of give us a brief overview of
Sure.
the call with your parents and kind of talking through some of those big decisions they had to make?
Well, I grew up in Philadelphia, and in the early 70s, my parents, along with some of their friends, bought 100 acres out in north central Pennsylvania. And they bought the land that no one else wanted. It was rocky, it was hilly. The local dairy farmers wanted nothing to do with it. And it was a cheap place to go and get vacations. It was essentially how we used it. And then right about 2008, my mother got a call from a landman saying we want to drill for natural gas. It turns out north central Pennsylvania is one of the prime areas, the sweet spots in the Marcellus Shale. And it really began a very difficult series of discussions with my parents because they were asking, should we do this? And if we do this, are we going to ruin the land, or will we be helping create a better future? Obviously, there was money. That was a factor. But they also were really curious about some really important questions. What is the best energy future for the country? If we allow this exploration, we allow more natural gas, is that a good thing? Is that a good thing for greenhouse gas emissions? And so these are all questions that we started talking through, and it made me realize that the energy future is very difficult. There's no simple answer. There's no simple black and white answer. There are trade-offs, and there are ways to get energy that we want. Natural gas is cheaper, it's cleaner than most energy we have right now. It enables more renewables to come onto the grid. So there are all sorts of benefits, but at the same time, this was a community, this was a very rural area where we enjoyed because there wasn't a lot of activity. It was away from the hustle and bustle of Philadelphia. So we had to bring that in, we allowed it in. And that's really what energy is, and that's really what the energy boom's all about. It's trade-offs. We get some good and some bad, so how do we balance that?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.